getting into prayer, it's important to expand your vision of prayer. Prayer can't simply be, number one, it can't be rote all the time. I deal with people who maybe will sit before the Blessed Sacrament for an hour and do nothing but the same prayer, reading them out of a book all the time. Personally, I prefer they throw away the book, because that's a prayer, but it reflects an aspect of prayer that is us always talking to God and not us listening to God. Here, we're in a spot where I'm surrounded by nature. I'm basically isolated. I'm probably about a mile from the nearest road, and the nearest road is still in the middle of a state park. There is some kind of an army base nearby, so occasionally you do hear cannons go off, but I don't even know where the base is. But it ain't right here. And here we are, surrounded by the nature that is here. Now, during the crisis, if you know about my writings, which many of you probably don't, I was actively involved in really battling some heavy hitters. And this is where I would come here to get my strength. I'd come here in prayer and in meditation and being in conversation with God. And that's what prayer is. Prayer is conversation. It doesn't surprise me that atheism, many people will tell you that atheism is ancient, but since I have a master's degree in divinity, including graduate level course from one of the experts in atheism in the country, who will tell you atheism is only 200 years old. Other forms of atheism that always existed were actually not that they didn't believe in God, it's that they don't believe in our gods. But atheism, we do not believe in God, is only about a little bit more than 200 years old. And you can understand where it comes from, because we go back to the early days of the Industrial Revolution, where people came off the land, people came out of nature, they went into the cities. The very thing that led to Karl Marx form his Marxist ideas, that the Industrial Revolution was causing people to be turned into machines, being alienated from their work because they were no longer on the land, they were no longer out of nature. And these were some of the issues that came from that time. And so you can see when people get off the land and they come on to just the cities, then they lose a sense of everything that is around us. This is Wampatuck State Park in Hingham, Massachusetts. As I said, it used to be an army base, and there is some other army base nearby. But it's a place to come and pray in this isolated area, in a place where I've done many times, to be with God and to listen to God. And it's important that we do that. If you are serious about prayer, it's important to go to places of prayer. In case you didn't know this, St. Benedict's Church is open all day long just for that reason in Somerville. It's a place of prayer. Go to places of prayer and pray. But also get out into the nature and pray. It doesn't substitute for church. It complements it. It adds to it. So we come here to be in touch with God alone. And it's important to come alone, unless you happen to have a TV camera. It's important to come here alone and you can't really pray contemplative prayer with others. You need to be with God alone. Quiet yourself down. And when you do that, then you start to see things that normally you wouldn't see. For example, if you look very carefully, you're going to see the ripples in the water, and you see the pattern that they form, indicating, a lot of things that are affecting the surface of the water: wind, movement, maybe something hitting the water, and all these things play themselves out in the surface of the water. Then you see the difference between the smooth surface and the more rougher surface beyond there, what indicates that the water gets deeper at that point, normally. It could also indicate wind patterns or something like that. Is it possible to walk on water? Now, we turn around and we know the story of Jesus in the Bible walking on water, and some people say, well, that's just a story, it's not true. Other people, such as myself, do believe it. But I want you to look at something very carefully. Is it possible to walk on water? Well, if you're one of these bugs, the answer is yes. You look very carefully, they're not swimming. They're actually on, especially if we can get a good close-up of them. They're actually on the water. And they don't move through it. They move on top of it as if they're walking on ice. So watch that very carefully. They're not reacting to the camera, by the way, with this movement. They're reacting to the wind, but I figured you already know that. But again, these are the things that you look at carefully. They aren't swimming on the water. They're just gliding on it as if it was a solid surface. Now, how they do that, they're bugs. They can do that. But notice how they treat the water completely different than you and I would, or for that matter, that fish I just showed. Things you start to notice. And the more you begin to notice them, the more you start to see them from a whole different perspective. And that's one of the important parts of prayer. We listen to God through the nature around us, as well as we listen to Him in our own lives.